I'm not seeing it, Marion.
We are live.
Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome those of you who are here in the room, as well as whoever is watching us from afar, to this November 15th meeting of the New York Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. And I would call the meeting to order and ask if there is an approval of the minutes from our public session of October 25th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I have a couple of corrections that I made. On page 5, I believe the fourth line of the carryover paragraph, I'm sorry, on page 7, should read presiding officer to conduct hearings rather than for hearings.
Okay.
Can I have that again?
Yes, on the fourth line of the carryover paragraph on page 7, the ultimate word is for. That should be to conduct.
Thank you.
And then I believe on page 12, we mentioned the first paragraph that Commissioner James going to be the video conference. We've already said that on page 2. So it would indicate on page 12 that Commissioner James never joined us until the very end of the public session, which isn't the case.
And the same is true on page 9. I was wondering that myself, why there were the repeated references, other than to ensure that every time there was a vote, he was in fact there.
That's what,
Yeah. And maybe it should read that he voted.
it says beginning he was here, right? And therefore, no need to repeat it. But
Just to lead all through, it's just, except for the first two.
I had one other, the very first line on page 1, I thought it was supposed to say, he was called to order and announced that a quorum of 6 commissioners were present. I think that our commission, it looked like somebody reworked the sentence and just
Would be.
right at the beginning, page 1, the call to order. Call the meeting to order and announced that a quorum of 6 commissioners.
Yeah, the commission is.
Yeah, it was, that was it.
Yes, Commissioner.
On page 5, we are now 2/3 down. Commissioner Edwards asked for insight regarding the demographic makeup of the applicants with respect to applicants applying from within and outside of the government, and interim Vice Chair Austin inquired as to the number of current staff applying for the positions. What was the staff response on that? It doesn't indicate.
We can check the recording.
Could you please?
The answer, but my recollection of the response was that we had applicants both from within and without, and we appeared to have a broad spectrum of applicants. But
And there were applicants also who were, oh, no, you didn't say it.
I mean, that's my recollection, but we'll check.
And what did we say about the demographics?
Then we believe we had a broad spectrum of applicants.
Could you include that in the minutes, please?
Any other changes? Is there a motion to approve as amended? So, Commissioner Reagan with a second by Vice Chair Austin. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I have it. Minutes rather than approved. So a report from staff.
Yes, let me just say for the record, we do have a quorum present here in New York. Full complement of 7 current members of the commission. Under tab B is the operations update. And as we did last month, the rest of commissioners, we've now provided comparison both to the corresponding period in 2021 as well as a comparison of current year-to-date figures and going back to the beginning of the year, so inclusive JCO figures against, again, the comparable period in 2021 in each of the categories. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I
Staff or
the last item, number of open investigations, 32, is that the number of open investigations on October 31st?
yes, and continues to be the number that we have. And that open in the sense of they had been formally opened by a previous commission. Commissioner.
And on that first page, number of matters closed for investigations is about half of what it was last year. Is that because of the delegation of authority issue, or why the drop off from?
Yeah, precisely. It's precisely because of that period of time during which you were able to take formal, staff was unable to take.
Any other questions here?
I just have one question with respect to Public Information Office about the record access requests. It says records provided. There were 17 requests, but records provided in 14 cases. I was just curious, were the requests denied, 3 that weren't there, or are they just pending?
No, they're pending. We still characterize these as records access requests. And in fact, we still have a regulation in effect, a carryover regulation that provides records access procedure. Prior commission was not subject to FOIL, so we had separate procedures. Now we have FOIL. So we're incorporating FOIL requests, and we're following FOIL as commission previously voted, following the model regulations for now until we have our own regulations. And we're going through the statutory time periods.
Thank you.
You can help me understand a little bit more, Secretary Merlin, about records provided and why there's such a big difference between 22 and 21 year to date when records requested. But that number is much higher in 22 than it was in 22.
And again, I think the explanation is the same. Under prior law, the Joint Commission on Public Ethics was not subject to FOIL. So narrower range information that the agency was permitted to make available, in which it was required to make available. Under FOIL, obligations and the availability of information has been broadened. We still have a number of restrictions, and in the coming months, staff will be presenting proposals for FOIL, a body of FOIL regulations that will clarify much of that. But now that we're subject to FOIL, we're getting more requests because we have a broader availability of information in general.
So not to belabor this, but what if that suggests that 21 should have had fewer records provided if Jacob was not subject to FOIL?
Well, if you're looking at the monthly count, you'll see that we're going up. We're going up
Okay.
now.
So-
Year to date, we had a period of time, again, where we were in stasis,
Okay.
and
All right.
and we didn't have the authority, as we viewed it, because there was no delegation to provide information except in those statutorily mandated situations, such as providing financial disclosure statement information as required by statute.
So by years, again, conceivably, we could exceed, but certainly next year we will exceed perhaps previous total numbers of records provided because of FOIL.
Yeah, I mean, conceivably, yes.
Okay.
You know, we're looking at about half a year or so with authority and for
Thank you. Other questions? Any more in the operations? Okay.
Nothing, just to say that in some areas where the numbers may look lighter than in prior periods, some of that is attributable to the fact that we have many, many vacancies. And just as we may be catching up, or at least approaching former figures and possibly exceeding them with respect to record access requests in other areas, as we fill vacancies, we're expecting the activity to increase. But by and large, staff has stepped up. And literally everyone has taken on additional responsibility.
Thank you.
Just had one other question. I know the number of delinquencies, 22. None, did I put there were none in 21? Okay, more.
Yeah, no, I see the figure. I'm going to ask Keith St. John, acting general counsel to director. That's it.
And the question is concerning the number of delinquencies that were issued last year versus issued today.
Yeah, the figure we're reflecting for the past, for the
It
2021.
reflects no delinquencies at all in 21. I'm just wondering. That's maybe an error.
My understanding is that there are delinquencies in the pipeline. It involves coordination between members of our FDS unit and the investigations and enforcement unit staff. So between Melinda and Lori, they coordinate and determine the timing of the issuance of these notices of delinquency. So I would imagine that there will be a significant number of notices being issued in the near future.
Right, but this year it's higher, it's 125. I'm talking about last year, zero.
It may, Keith, would it have been a similar timing issue that for administrative reasons last year, the notices were generated after second wave of filings came in? We have two major filing periods because we have a period when the general population of policymakers and threshold filers file, and then a separate date when SUNY and CUNY filers file. And we may have pushed that back. Conceivably, we'll have to check.
Yeah, I'll have to inquire further. It more than likely is a timing issue, with respect to when the various statements were due. There are statements that are due in May and then statements that are due from the academic and institutions on November 15th today. So between the timing that may explain away the significant disparity in the numbers from year over year. But I'll look into that.
But you should have that reported now because this is in 2021. Am I right? You had no inquiries in 2021.
No delinquencies issued last year.
Right.
October.
So you must-
Through October.
Through October.
Through October.
Yeah.
There may have been some discussion to hold off on, there were failure to file notices issued, I believe. And so you can see at the same time last year, there was a significant number of failure to file notices issued, but I believe that, we can check on that, I'm sure, but I believe the notices of delinquency were not issued because of the backlog from COVID.
So some of those notices of delinquencies that were filed in 22 may have really been for 21.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Bridge bridging update?
Yes. As reported at the last meeting on October 25th, after that time, we were approaching the deadline for submissions for the bulk of the postings, for 13 of the 14 postings. Those postings completed, I believe it was on October 28th. We are now in the process of interviewing individuals. We have a substantial number of interviews now scheduled in the coming next couple of weeks for a large number of candidates who will be coming in remotely for interviews. And overall, it looks as if we have a good qualifying group. We'll see as the interviews progress where we come out.
Yes.
So it seems to me that this is something we really need to focus on, given the huge number of vacancies we have, and particularly at the highest level. And we said, and it's reflect that the last meeting, we should, as commissioners, be encouraging people to apply. I gather that time period has expired. You mentioned the end of October.
We will still entertain applications, but we've reached the point where we feel we have the contingent that applied during that period, and we've sifted through those resumes.
In light of that, I have, first of all, where do we post? See, I know there's a reference to the commission website. If you go on the commission website, do you see vacancy for communications person or chief investigator? Is there a description of who we're looking for, the jobs we're looking to fill?
There's a link to all the postings. There's a tab for employment opportunities. And in terms of the granularity of it, if we have that in front of me, Marlena?
Yes, Judge.
In terms of the linkage that we have for the job postings on the website, Commissioner Cardozo is asking how much detail is provided on our webpage as opposed to following the link to the job opportunities.
The webpage gives you a very good description of what it is exactly that we're looking for with respect to the position as well as to the location and the number of positions that are available for each one of those specific employment opportunities. However, when you do go to, let's say, State Jobs New York, those job descriptions do have greater detail there.
I appreciate it. I just think we really have to focus on, this is so important, given the number of vacancies we have and the quality that we track. I would suggest that there be a little printout distributed to each of us that would say this, because we must know, as a lawyer, I can think of some people that it's certainly worth an email to, Sam Smith. Hey, we're looking for this. It would be a great opportunity for you. I would think we all probably have some contacts in that or other fields. And given the importance of this, I would suggest that we do that.
We can provide that. We can provide the commission.
Any other comments on the recruiting update?
Well, this may be the wrong place to raise the issue, but it really raises the question of our budget. And is there a time in the foreseeable future that we can really have a walkthrough of our whole budget to understand where our priorities had been and whether any changes should be, wholly apart from the fact that we need more money generally, I would think we want to take a look at where our priorities are and is there any changes that should be made in that connection.
Particularly, I think, as we plan the budget for the next fiscal year, we should have a thorough discussion.
I'm not sure we should wait till the next fiscal year.
Let's see where we are
Yeah, I
now.
think we need to not only look at the budget, understand the budget, agree on the priorities of the budget, and delegate it to a committee to oversee the budget for this year.
Comments?
Let me say this, what we're doing now with respect to recruiting, we are seeking to fill the vacancies in the existing staffing plan, which the commission had approved so that we could get back to full strength. We staff do have a proposal going forward for, in some instances, restructuring of groups. Our suggestions for that, which we would like to get with commissioners, whether through committee or otherwise, as well as areas in which we feel very strongly that additional staffing is required. So we have a proposal to present. Of course, commissioners may have different views
What is
on
your
those.
fiscal year?
The fiscal year begins April 1st.
And so I still think we need to see that. Because we're inheriting it, right? I'm not suggesting that we change it. I'm suggesting that we see it, understand it, and know it, and buy off on it.
No, absolutely. We did present the staffing plan, which represents the lion's share.
It's not the staffing plan, it's the finances I want to look at. I think this should be much more, we should be much more on top of the budget, all in agreement on what it looks like. Even if we say we don't like it, we should keep it the way it is, but moving forward, at least we'll have in mind what we want to change. But it's hard to make decisions around staffing, as I understand the full budget.
Yes, and in fact, you're anticipating the next item, which unfortunately, I'm not going to be presenting today because Mariana is ill. That falls within her area of responsibility. Mariana has in fact done a projection, fairly detailed projection, to the end of the fiscal year, looking at each line item in the budget in terms of commitments, in terms of staffing, and in terms of expected costs through the end of the year. We'll have to do that next month, but we do have that. And what I was trying to explain is, with respect not only to the existing staffing plan, which from my perspective was something that we needed to get in place so we could do existing business as well as we could at a reasonable level of staffing. We do have proposals for substantial changes, but with which commissioners may agree or disagree, may have other recommendations or thoughts. In terms of the very priorities, I think, that you're alluding to. And of course, budget is a critical part of it because we've tried to, in terms of the proposal that we have once the committees are in place, it does reflect our view of how the funding of the commission and its necessary functions have to come together. So we have a balance. So I think we're in the same place in this. I think we're in the same place. But I just wanted to let you know that, A, we are looking at the budget. We are monitoring it in a detailed way. And we do have proposals that we'd love to share.
It's not to suggest that. I'm just saying, as a commission, responsible for the producer responsibilities of what we've been given under this new legislation, as well as carrying over the duty responsibility of Jacob, we need to understand where we are right now with the budget that's been authorized. I'm not suggesting we interfere. I'm not suggesting we change priorities, but we need to know. I think it should be part of every agenda, and it would be great. We have our committees. It would be under the administrative committee so that board members are aware on a month-to-month basis of where we are with the budget. And so, like, for example, in the absence of a staff person to make their presentation, for a particular month, you've got a board member who can step in and do that. So I just think, I appreciate what you're saying, and I have no question about the plans in place.
I don't think we're in a different place at all.
That we need to be on top of pre and post existing and post financial issues.
Understood. And I think that there are sort of at least two comments to be made here. One is it should be reflected on the minutes that we have requested and will get the next meeting to start a review of the budget. But the other comment I would make is that, as you referenced, we do have a subcommittee on the budget, under the Committee on Administration. Between now and next meeting, we should get these committees populated, get that subcommittee working, and they can all also review. And in the absence of staff, if other staff are not ready to step in to talk about the budget, then perhaps commissioners who are on the budget committee can do that.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's one of the challenges we have. We don't currently have a director of administration. And we have vacancies in the administrative staff below the level. So, as I mentioned, folks are doing multiple duties. Nonetheless, we do have a projection to year end, which we were going to present at this meeting. Unfortunately, Mariana is ill, so we'll do it at the next meeting. And we did a very high level recap, if you'll recall, at the last meeting on generally where we stand.
And I think it's safe to say we are running way under budget on personnel side and slightly over budget on the OTPS side, but we should have the specifics and we will in December.
Thank you.
All right, so more on this?
Following up on that, so will that report in December include a written report for the commission?
It will be, it's quite a detailed spreadsheet, line item by line item showing year-to-date spend and projected spend through the end of the fiscal year. So it's as comprehensive, I think, as we're capable of doing with the systems that we have. But it does require explanation.
Sorry.
Knowing the Albany budget procedures a little bit, there's going to be some intense lobbying, it would seem to me, from the commission to explain to the legislature why we need additional funds, and perhaps reallocating in some areas. So I think the sooner we do this and really understand the budget in a better way, the better. And then my question would be, though, how do we convey, all due respect, it's one thing to send a memo to the budget office and say we need X dollars, Y dollars, and Z dollars. There's another thing for the right person to be sitting down with the top budget people and explaining the nitty-gritty as to why this has to be done. We may be a little bit premature, but as I understand it, at least from what I've done on the court budget, it's really not too early to start worrying about this.
It's not. In fact, typically, we would have received the so-called budget call by now. And we're somewhat surprised that it hasn't come. And that was noted, I think, in some of the media. Not just us, it's statewide. There will be a call coming from the governor's office with some, general statewide direction as to what they're anticipating in terms of
But in the past, who, when push comes to shove, when Jacob, who sat down with the budget people and the top people in the governor's office to say, hey, we need more money in because of X, Y, and Z? I mean, is that, someone from the outside? Is it a commissioner? Is it you? How does it politically work?
It's, in the first instance, it's the director of administration, currently vacant position, working with the Office of Budget to formulate the budget, submit a budget for review. The way, in my period of time here, the way we have done it is to put together the budget the way the commission believes budget should be structured, both in terms of maintaining the functionality of the commission, improving the functionality in stated areas, and anticipating necessary cost increases, mandatory raises, step increases, those kinds of things that occur, as well as increased overhead costs and those kinds of things. And then we put it in a budget and we get a reaction.
I guess what I'm trying to say, though, I understand that, but at some point in time, I think the right political person has got to talk to the right, representing the commission, has got to make these points, not to the budget office here, but at a much higher level in the governor's office, to say, hey, we've got a new commission doing all sorts of things, costs have increased, et cetera, to make the point that we really need more money. I appreciate the mechanics that have to be done, but at some point in time, some person with a lot of clout needs to talk to someone else, the right person in the governor's office, to really make this emphatic point.
So I think maybe that could be a part of the report back, in addition to looking at the budget for this year in some detail, and us getting the budget subcommittee up and running. We should think about what's the process, or have a plan for the process for developing and submitting a new budget and educating both the executive chamber as well as the legislature as to why we need the funds we're requesting. All right.
Who's going to do the work for the director the current position that is vacant.
Who is fulfilling that role?
At present, Mariana has taken over responsibility for that.
And will she handle the tasks at hand relative to the upcoming budget? To meet with the budget people?
Well, it's executive staff that takes it up. So in terms of the mechanics of putting together the budget, the physical presentation of it, yes, that would be handled by Mariana. But it would be the executive director and executive staff who would be formulating the budget in terms of whatever additional amounts we think are required. In this instance, I do think it's very important for staff to have the opportunity to present to commissioners our proposals for modifying and augmenting the staffing plan. That's where the predominance of our costs, over 80% of the commission's cost is in the personal services side of things.
That should be a part of both the budget report for this fiscal year, but also the proposed budget for the new year.
Absolutely. Keith and Carol and I have spent a good deal of time in anticipation of the commission coming together in formulating a proposal to present to you.
Right.
Which will substantially increase the capabilities of the commission and the ability of the commission to execute its mission. Obviously, that has financial consequences. I believe we have crafted a proposal, and of course, it doesn't reflect priorities that commissioners may have that perhaps go beyond.
Sure.
What staff has proposed.
That can be a part of a part of our discussion and deliberation. So that we'll take a look at it, right? We'll get the full report this summer.
I guess one thing's not clear to me. I think, Michael, who is the commission's advocate in the governor's office? Would that be you?
It would be me.
Okay.
Okay, so it seems to me that somebody's going to present some budgetary issues to us as the commission. We're going to say, well, that makes sense. And if you agree with it or we tweak it at all, then it would go to the next level. And that's where we would seek out, whether it's the governor's office or just the budget folks in Albany.
Or the legislature that has to ultimately pass it, right? Commissioner Grunway.
Correct.
Well, my first question was have we received the budget call letter yet? You've answered that. We have not. But for those that aren't familiar with the budgeting process, that's how the process begins. There is this call letter from the budget director asking each agency to submit its proposals for the coming fiscal year. And that is a great opportunity for us. That document, it should never be just a pro forma document. It's as much an advocacy document as I think it is a fiscal document. And I think we should take advantage of that and definitely have an opportunity to review that before it's submitted, just to make sure, first, that we believe it reflects the priorities as we understand them and we're aware of what we're saying to the budget director. But second, in the budget making process, there is some agencies are asked to present at a budget hearing, an open hearing. I don't know if this body in any of its iterations has ever been invited to present at a budget hearing. But having once presented at one, it's an opportunity to be heard in a public forum. And it's also a time when advocates, those who want to be heard, or critics, can speak following the budget presentation. And I think it might be a wonderful opportunity for us to see, talking to our budget examiner, so whoever the contact is in the governor's counsel's office, or, the director of state operations, whomever our liaison is to to suggest that might be something we're interested in. Because we know for a fact from the letter that was just sent the other day and other letters that have been sent, there are a number of good government groups out there who are watching us and I hope rooting for us. And I think if we can explain to them and have them help us explain how we're prioritizing our mission, I think that could be very useful.
And let me just say this, I think it's very important that we have the opportunity, that staff have the opportunity to present to commissioners our proposal, which I think will align, and that's our expectation, but we will advocate for what we think is appropriate. And commissioners will react as well. I do want to say that we did make it known last year that from staff's perspective, we needed substantial augmentation, substantial increase in budget. And I do think the budget, although the budget submission process was frustrating, from my perspective, the ultimate outcome as reflected in the legislation that was passed was very much responsive to advocacy by staff. And I think it was heard, I think it was particularly heard in the Senate. We didn't have an opportunity to present to the Assembly, but did present testimony to Senate Ethics
I think that's
and Internal Governance Committee, and made the pitch that we needed substantial additional funding. And while it wasn't provided to the old agency, I do think there was a response in the budget that was provided for this agency. But again, whether it's adequate to what U.S. commissioners think is necessary is some you need to see the detail. And I regret I'm not able to provide the granularity of detail in the budget presentation, which had been my expectation. Mariana did do the projection. I apologize that it's going to be next month, not this month. We do mind, we're mindful of how our expenses are being incurred.
So it seems pretty straightforward to me that once you present it to us, we want to make sure we're on the same page and we believe in the budget that's been proposed internally. At that point, we'll go forward.
That sounds right. Commissioner Cardozo.
Just to reiterate what Nancy said, though, I agree with everything Ed said, but there is a second chapter to this process, I call it a political process. And it's premature, but we should think about how do we get the good government groups. I headed a commission for a couple of years on judicial salaries, and the interest groups came out articulating on behalf of now the retired judges here, but articulated the need to worry about these salaries. And given what we saw the other day, and the interest groups have actually communicated to us before, I'm sure they'll be continuing to communicate with us. We have to think through and be prepared to utilize them appropriately to be speaking. Exactly where that should be is premature, but I think we have to keep that very much in mind, in addition to the hard work about where the money should be allocated.
Sure. And I would also just make the point that staff doesn't have to go to the executive chamber or the legislature alone.
Exactly.
A number of commissioners here have considerable experience in advocating for and negotiating around budgets with the Assembly and with executive branches of government. So we should take advantage of that expertise as well. Other comments on this before we move on?
I really just want to add that I agree with all the conversations that's taking place, particularly between Michael and Nancy. I think that it's the fact that we got such a significant increase in our budget for this year, to me, suggests that we should follow this route in terms of being visible to all those bodies to see how our priorities change and how we're worthy of the significant increase that we received.
Agreed. Understood and agreed is what I was trying to say.
Okay.
All right. Anything else here?
Thank you.
So we will go to the proposed meeting schedule.
Yes, that's under tab C in the meeting materials. These are proposed dates for commission meetings on a monthly basis, January through June of 2023. Typically, wouldn't be voting on the schedule now, but at the next meeting, you can sample time. But I would ask that commissioners take a look at the schedule, see if they have any conflicts, and you know, also if they believe this will work in terms of meeting the commission's obligations. And if any adjustments are necessary, just let me know and I'll circulate further proposal.
Do we have continued target dates that we're going to end up in Albany 1 month and the city the next month? Is that a factor to take into account? Because just speaking as a New Yorker, I have a problem with the March date if it's going to be, if we're expected to be in Albany. If it's going to be in New York, I don't. And it really goes to, will we continue to try to all get together physically, which I think is a very good idea.
I think the March date's in New York meeting if we keep alternating back and forth. Commissioner.
I also have a conflict with the March date. So it's for us to consider.
We can move it up a week. I'm reluctant to, in the course of the year, to have gaps in months. And I also, you know, ask that everybody be mindful of the pressure on staff. It's if we have a regular period between meetings, and I take full responsibility for the accelerated schedule we've had since the commission has been convening, and I appreciate everyone being able to participate fully. We need everybody because we're so slimly constituted now.
That may also relate to, do we have any word about when the new commissioners will be on board? Any?
At least I don't.
No, we've heard nothing further. Have reason to believe that the Assembly Speaker's candidate may be advancing, but I don't know for sure. There was an announcement, but we don't have confirmation as to whether that nomination has been advanced. Beyond that, and the others we've had no word on.
Could we be more proactive and inquire? And could you call the commission? Could you call the stuff?
Independent review committee?
Yeah.
Sure. And, you know, yes, the answer is yes.
And will the December date be changed per your email of last night?
Well, we have some challenges. I asked if we could move it to the 15th, but Seymour can't make it on the 15th. Is that right?
That's supposed to be in Albany.
That's supposed to be in Albany. We could look, anybody, I hesitate to do this, but I'm supposed to be in Florida. I could try to rearrange. I know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like we should.
If it's not February. If it was February, I could completely understand. But is there any chance we could do it on the 16th? Which is the Friday.
Okay with me.
Because the original date was the 20th. So would the 16th work? All right, thank you. Everybody, we're good? Please.
Let me just ask, would it be better to conduct that in New York as opposed to Albany and change the cycle?
According to Commissioner Edwards, it's easier to get to Albany from New Jersey than it is to get down here. I'm not so sure, but I'd be happy to do it here. I would ask our upstate contingent.
I would always prefer it to be in Albany, but.
It doesn't matter to me. It's just tough to get down the.
Actually, I'm gonna be upstate anyway.
Hotel
It's a Friday, so
same rate.
say that again.
To get a hotel room, which I have to, on the 16th of December might be an impossibility, but that's fine because if I can't, I mean, I can, you know, Nancy, I can always go to Albany, right?
Yeah.
I want to put any, undue stress on the staff,
Right.
but that seems to be easier, okay? Because I can accomplish that within a day.
So,
I can drive there and then drive. So,
so it sounds like we should just go to Albany as planned. That's where we plan to be anyway.
well, I don't want to,
On the 16th.
it doesn't, whatever's easier for everybody else, I'm a little more pliable,
We can go to,
flexible.
Pliable or pliable?
we'll be in Albany on December
All
16th,
right, we'll leave it at.
starting at our
We'll leave
regular
it
time
at
at 10:30. Correct. December 16th, Albany, New York. All right.
And I will ask staff to make the necessary arrangements.
And I think in circulating this, it might be helpful to say where the headquarters for that meeting will be. In other words, December Albany emphasized, obviously it's not mandated, but so we can sort of note it in our calendar because obviously it takes us more time.
On the schedule
Yeah.
for the location, understanding that based on whatever factors, those things might change. And I should say that our plan is in terms of public access, physical access to our meetings, to always have the Albany location open, regardless of where the meeting is taking place. However, the converse will not be true. So if the meeting is taking place in Albany, we're not planning to make reservations for this conference center. If there's a need for it, we do have video conferencing equipment. Space is much more limited here, so we can maybe accommodate a very small segment of the public. If any of the commissioners would prefer to meet at this location while others are meeting in Albany.
Is there any plans to give the opportunity for Syracuse? In other words, not that everybody has to come to Syracuse, but the opportunity to have a forum where I could, I could go.
Sure. I mean,
Because this,
As long as we have a space that is open to the public at the location where commissioners are present,
is that a budgetary concern or is that, because I'm the only one from Syracuse?
I will say that on the non-personal expense side, we do have to be mindful of the budget. We can, in the next budget cycle, certainly factor in.
Well, what I'm suggesting, if it's less expensive for me to travel than to have the opportunity for me to go to a Syracuse office, then whatever is the least expensive way to do it is what I'm in favor of. Travel if I have to. But if it's not, that would be more convenient for me. And no, what I'm saying is that if we're meeting in Albany or we're meeting in New York City, can I just meet in Syracuse?
You can, as long as you make the space in which you're going to be present during the meeting open to the public. So if the building where, your office, for example, is located has a conference center of some kind, or the firm is willing to allow the public into a large conference room. It's
set up enough chairs.
There have been instances, I'm told, not for the Ethics Commission, but instances in which individuals have offered to do that in order to comply with the requirements. And it's not unreasonable. So the answer is yes.
Okay. And then the other technical stuff
Subject to that.
is just, my computer with the ability to Zoom or any other.
And I can imagine that, climate change notwithstanding, that the weather's going to impact us too. Because January, February, maybe even March. So we'll have to make some adjustments there as well.
I do think we're benefiting when we can all physically get together, both at the meeting itself and if we have any, few of us get together for dinner or what have you.
Yeah, I agree. That would be my priority. When I look at the months that we're going to be meeting, the weather can be treacherous in Syracuse.
Yeah. And all
Where it snows every
You don't have control of it? No.
All righty, so we have a schedule, we have the schedule as proposed with some modifications, and we'll meet next month on December 16th in Albany. Anything else here? All right.
The next item is item 4, and it's proposed conforming amendments to the Commission's regulations at 19 NYCRR, Chapter 20, excluding a number of subparts, 937, 940, and 941. But we would be modifying the others. These are conforming amendments so that the Commission's regulations in terms of cross-references to statutes that were affected, particularly Executive Law Section 94 that were affected by the legislation passed earlier this year, and also to, of course, change the reference to the Commission's name from the former Commission to the current Commission. And I want to certainly acknowledge Carol Quinn, co-acting General Counsel and Acting Director of Lobbying, for her efforts in putting this proposal together. And it would be both for purposes of full rulemaking and emergency adoption at this time.
I appreciate the work that went into this, but it's substantively, other than substituting colleague for Jacob, are there any substantive changes? It was very difficult to.
Not in this rulemaking, no, this is just a simple name change and, forming the sites to the proper sections of section 94. 94.
I do think, maybe we should discuss this separately, there is a real need to have a substantive review of our regulations, particularly with respect to delegation, and Ed and Len and I have had, discussing, what, learning from the Hogan Lovells report, for example, there's a real substantive need that we have to, as a commission or as a committee of the commission, has got to look at delegation issues. And I gather that's not the.
No, this is just, like I said, a more of a basic rulemaking.
I will acknowledge that a portion of the letter that we got from one of the good government groups recently speaks to this as well, both reviewing that Hogan Lovells report for its implications for this commission, but looking at other issues as well. So we haven't formally established a review committee, but it seems like there have been at least informal conversations among several commissioners who are willing to help us with that role, take the lead on it. And that's Commissioners Cardozo, Carney, and Austin. So we should think about between now and the next meeting how we want to formalize this and actually move forward on it. Commissioner Groeneweg.
No, I think the need for action on that is great. That was what's been out there. I raised it at the last meeting when we did that one delegation.
Yes.
One of the things I think would be helpful is, I think the conversations that arise informally are good, that people are talking, but I think it's important that we all have a sense of what's going on so that we know, even if we're not part of a committee, that the committee has been or started to meet, that we have a sense of what they're planning to be doing at those meetings, just so we know and aren't confronted with a situation after the fact where we get a final work product. It's often well done, but we don't know the full background of it, and it leads to a lot of questions. So I think if we have a process for making committee assignments, it's something we should discuss as a whole rather than a series of one-off conversations.
Agreed.
Just to make this more complicated, referring to the letter we got from the good government groups, and there was an earlier one, I think, is we should think about whether at least a subcommittee should be hearing what, I'm not saying that they're right, but other groups have an interest in what these issues are. And perhaps we should set aside some time to hear, maybe by subcommittee, what some of these other groups have to say. We may disagree with them, but I don't know that we want to exclude them from the deliberative process.
I think so two comments. One is that I misspoke. It was a number of good government groups that sent the most recent letter. But I think as a part of this committee that's working on committee structures between now and December, there should be conversations with all of us as to what committees we want to serve on. And then a process for how those committees will be then constituted and presented to the public. And I think it should be the right of any commissioner to attend for additional compensation should we get there, to attend any committee with no vote, of course, at that committee, but the right to attend the committee meeting if he or she chooses to, if they choose to do that. But that can be a part of the committee's work, and then we'll report back in December, at the December meeting.
And I should add as well that Heath and his team have been looking at essentially the same constellation of issues. And so I think it would be well, and they're certainly prepared to interact with the full commission, with any number of committees as necessary, as is staff generally, on all of these issues, and including the overall command of the statute, that the commission be mindful of potential needs for modification in regulations, or for that matter, in former advisory opinions. And staff has a constellation of things, not just proposals, but things that they do want to bring to the attention of the commission at large.
I do think that at least reading the Hogan Lovells report, which I did on the train coming back to New York after our last meeting, really opened my eyes, at least, to a number of problems, at least as from the perspective of that report. Very lawyer-like, but it may be that everyone should read it or circulate or maybe condense it in some way, because I found it very educational of some of the problems we're talking about.
I would agree. I actually have started myself, and again, it was referenced in the most recent letter we received, and it is enlightening and could even be described as instructive, at least for me in some ways.
Yeah, and I do think it would be very helpful, in fact, for commissioners to have the opportunity to meet with staff to understand the process, not only as it applies to outside activities, but to guidance generally, which is one of the fundamental functions of this commission, of staff. And indeed, the new statute is very specific in directing that there be a unit, a staff unit, directed at providing not only outside activity oversight, but guidance generally to those who seek it from the commission. So it's broadly there, and I think there is, in fact, there is a specific mandate. So that
It's not on the website.
Yeah, it is.
No.
Hogan Lovells report is just one.
Yes.
Perhaps we should also take a look at the Assembly Judiciary Committee report, which is referenced.
Yes, it's referenced. So we will agree to have done some homework relative to both of those reports by the time we meet again in December.
It was circulated to us.
One is on the website,
Mhm.
right, and I'm not sure whether Senate Judiciary, Assembly
Assembly
Judiciary.
Judiciary Committee.
Sure what that is.
We can make that available.
Maybe just circulate both of them. Anything else here? All right. So do we need a vote on this?
Yeah, we need two, it's a two votes, Carol, one on the emergency and one.
Go ahead,
Trying
Carol.
to get your attention on that. So yeah, this is to adopt the text that you see in your attachment on an emergency basis, meaning effective today. And then also submit for a regular rulemaking process, which allows for the 60-day public comment period, and then that would allow us to eventually permanently adopt them. So today, we would need a motion to proceed with the notice of emergency adoption and proposed rule.
And that those are both actions contained in the one motion. Correct.
Correct, as long as you understand that them today as an emergency and also submitting for regular rulemaking.
In accordance with the state administrative
Yes.
procedure.
Sure.
Is there, do we have a basis for emergency rulemaking? Other times I've appreciated the need for the emergency. Since this is just a technical conforming amendment, do we have any reason to think lack of that conforming amendment is having a legal implication right now?
So we checked off the general welfare as and just, I guess, the need to have correct citations in the regulations and, to the correct section or provision within 94, the new 94, and also, the name change, I guess, is the name change.
I appreciate that. And the only thing I wanted to be clear on is so far that we've done rulemaking a couple of times. We've had what I thought was a sufficient basis for emergency rulemaking each time. But I just want to be clear that we don't intend to routinely engage in.
No, this is, I frankly am concerned that there may be confusion out there that is among those who are affected by our regulations as to what commission they should be dealing with.
And I think that's appropriate. I just wanted to be clear about it. And I think we've got reasons, as we'll see later on, to understand which body's doing what when is important. So, okay, I think that you've answered my question as to the sufficiency of the basis to do it.
Is there a motion to this effect, both to do the changes on emergency basis and then to go through the regular rulemaking process?
So moved, Commissioner.
Cardoza, and then seconded by Commissioner Carney. Any more discussion on this?
To the extent Commissioner Edwards was asking us for certain documents to be distributed to us, I note that the letter from the good government groups that was sent to us, all the links in it are live. So if you click, I just clicked on it, you can see the impeachment investigation report. It's a live link, so you have it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Thank you. The next item or applications, there are 4 of them for exemption from the revolving door restrictions. These applications are pursuant to Public Office Law Section 73(8)(b). And I will turn it over to Keith to explain. The documentation in redacted form, should say, are under attachments E, F, G, and H.
You're becoming slowly more and more familiar with both the restrictions and the exemption that's allowed to these restrictions. Again, Section 73 of the Public Officers Law, Subdivision 8, contains certain restrictions, both a 3-year bar and a lifetime bar for former state employees with respect to communicating with their former state agency or working on a matter that significantly relates to a matter that they worked on previously as a state employee. Subdivision 8-B of that same section 73 allows for certain departures from that normal restrictive rule. In instances when an agency head certifies that a former employee has particular expertise, knowledge, or experience with respect to a particular matter, that meets the agency's need for a particular period of time. And meeting that need through alternative methods has proven to be unavailable to them, or at a cost that's not comparable to the cost that would be afforded a relationship between the former agency and its former employee by way of contract. So we've got four different applications, certifications that have been submitted to the commission for its approval. One from the New York State Homes and Community Renewal with respect to a former employee there for whom the agency would like to contract for a period of, I believe, 6 months to a year. And then we've got several certification exemptions from the Thruway Authority with respect to its need for consulting services from those three former employees in relation to an administrative procedure that the agency is currently going through with respect to the dispute of a claim submitted by a contractor or the Governor Mario Cuomo Bridge.
Vice Chair, awesome.
I was just curious. I understand under tab E, the retirement of somebody who left sometime this year. But it's a bit curious that we have with the Thruway Authority, a 2019 departure, 2021 departure, and a 2018 departure. That seems to be quite attenuated in terms of bringing them back.
I think it speaks to the length of the multi-tiered appeals process that the contractor is entitled to by virtue of the contract that it had with the Thruway Authority when it constructed the bridge. It is a process that takes several years from commencement to completion. And so in spite of the fact that several of these employees at the Thruway Authority retired several years ago, it's only because the dispute over a particular claim for additional compensation by one of the contractors, that dispute has now extended through this year and is expected to be complete by the end of next year. And so in preparation for a particular step of this four-stage administrative review process, the Thruway Authority is trying to prepare for hearings early next spring before an administrative panel or the administrators panel or the executive directors panel. Again, it's a particular stage of the four-stage process. And so in spite of the fact that the process started several years ago, it continues, and the agency needs the ability to consult with former employees who played significant and substantial roles with respect to the elements of the claim that is being disputed by the contractor.
In the first application, in our short time of tenure here, I've seen the letters that we've seen for the revolving door say that there would be no further requests or the like. These for the Thruway seem to be open-ended.
Well, I believe
I'm misreading it.
Thruway Authority proposes to contract with each of the three individuals for a period beginning December 1st of this year and ending December 1st of next year. We're not extending beyond November 1st of next year.
Because some of them say with the possibility of a renewal. Does that mean they're including a renewal if it doesn't happen?
I think they are at least alerting this commission that should the appeals process extend beyond a year, the Thruway Authority may be coming back to the commission for an extension of the time within which they can contract with their former employees. I think it's really driven by the length of time that this multi-year contract dispute, the length of time that it takes for it to go through the entire administrative review and perhaps even judicial process, because after this four-step administrative review process, if the contractor is not, does not get the relief that it is seeking, it can always bring an Article 78 proceeding or a claim in the court claims against the Thruway Authority. So the Thruway Authority is not sort of, is hoping that it doesn't go that far, but in the event that it might go that far, the Thruway Authority is at least opening the door or letting this commission know that they may be knocking on the door again if this appeal is not concluded through the administrative process versus the judicial process.
Yeah, and if I understand the statute correctly, if it goes to that next phase, if it ends up in the Court of Claims, then the Thruway Authority needs to inform us, certify, but they no longer need the consent of the commission if they're in court and using these individuals, I believe.
Yes, either if the Attorney General's office is representing the Thruway Authority or the General Counsel of the Thruway Authority is representing the agency, then what happens is the Attorney General or the General Counsel, under a different subdivision of Section 73, instead of it being 8-B, it would be 8-A. And essentially the Attorney General's office or General Counsel simply notifies this commission that there were certain individuals, again, with particular experience and expertise and history and knowledge that the law enforcement officer needs in order to adequately defend the Thruway Authority. So it wouldn't necessarily be another ask of this commission, but simply notice to the commission that the dispute is now in the court system in either state or federal court. And so we're just put on notice that these former employees who might otherwise appear to be violating the post-employment restrictions, in fact, are not.
Commissioner Cardoza.
I'm confused. This same issue is going to be taken up according to the agenda in the executive session with a supporting letter. And then according to the agenda, we're going to take it up one last time. So as a practical matter, aren't we having a premature discussion? And, really, we don't need to discuss this now. We should discuss this in the executive session. And then second thing, are all these applications different than the ones we discussed at our last meeting, which are reflected in the minutes?
They are different.
Different individuals. Are they all different individuals or the same?
Different individuals completely.
Definitely similar.
The only common element between today's presentation and the presentation, I think, 2 months ago, one of the agencies, Homes and Community Renewal, they've been before us once before.
It's a practical.
Regarding a different employee for a very different purpose.
But as a practical matter, then it will be in our executive session when we talk about the whatever substantive issues there may be.
The reason it's been bifurcated is because although from the agency perspective, it's not a privileged application or a confidential application because there were individuals who are involved. To the extent there are questions with respect to those individuals, that matter should be discussed.
I understand that, but since we're discussing it on three different meetings, but it's really all.
That was just to come out to vote if there were any questions. Frankly, if there are no questions with respect to the individuals,
we won't need a long discussion.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. And the other thing I think that might be good about this is that the public gets some sense of that we're not just automatically approving these requests, that we take them seriously, and that we are not in the business of allowing agencies to bring back staff instead of making the hires that they need to make, nor are we in the business of allowing staff to retire and then come back and necessarily sanctioning their being reemployed after they've retired and are collecting a pension, and then come back and collect additional salaries for the jobs they were doing. So that we're taking all of that very seriously. Yes, sir.
So with respect to the request from homes and community renewal, perhaps it's better to discuss this during executive session. I didn't see a rate of pay in that request. There's a maximum, but there is no rate of pay.
So we'll pick it up in executive session. Since it's a particular individual. Okay. All right, so we will come back and vote on this in the public session, assuming we get as after our discussion in executive session. Is there any new or other business?
There's a proposal to retain a communications consulting firm to assist the commission while the process moves forward to fill the currently vacant position of Director of Communications, Public Information Officer. My understanding is that certain issues related to this proposal will be addressed in executive session, and then the proposal, if it reaches that level, will be considered and voted upon when the commission comes back into public session.
Right.
So that's one item.
Okay, that's great. And the reason we're doing it in executive session is because there are legal implications for this perhaps.
Yeah, some issues have been raised.
Right.
That could be addressed in executive session.
And then I think the other thing we should be clear on is that what we're looking to do, I think, is after the discussion to authorize the executive director staff bring this contract to completion. That's going to be the nature of what we pursue, as I understand.
Yes,
Okay.
that's my understanding as well.
All right.
Yes. And there was another proposal with respect to Commissioner per diem policy. Yeah. That again, I think there's some issues that were raised that should be addressed first in executive session, and then depending upon the outcome of that discussion, we'll come back into public session for that.
That's good. Thank you. Just so it's clear, two issues. One, retaining a consultant to help fill in on some of the work that our PIO would otherwise do with that person were in place. And then to look at the per diem of compensation for commissioners, and we'll report back out. Is there a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law 185 and Executive Law 94, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to section 94 of the Executive Law? Is there a motion to that effect? Vice Chair Austin, is there a second? I think we have it from Commissioner James. All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We will move into executive session.
All right, let's just wait until the live stream's disconnected.
contract on behalf of the commission
Under such terms.
under such terms.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner James seconds. Is there any discussion? Move the question. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Is there any other business that we have before we close the meeting? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner James moves and Commissioner Groenewegen seconds. All in favor?
Thank you.
And we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Let's take a moment for your sake. Well, are we off now?